Coming up on today's episode of Real Talk Rentals, the tenants are ready to move in. The deposit's been paid. What happens now? Welcome to Real Talk Rentals, a podcast brought to you by OnQ Property Management. We're here to give you all the tips, secrets, and tricks that go into owning a successful rental property. My name is Ben, and I'm going to be your host, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Eric Dixon, the go-to expert on all things property management and rental in Arizona. And this episode, we're joined by a very special guest, Ryan Haueter, not Haueter, as I often say. He's got over 20 years of property management experience, and he's the director of property management here at OnQ Property Management, overseeing the management of over 3,500 homes. So we're going to jump right into it. This week, we're going to be talking about what happens now that a tenant has been placed, security deposit's been paid, it's time for them to move in. What happens when we take over from there? And I'll throw that out to you guys.
All right. Hey, let's go to the special guest first. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me. Longtime listener.
No, but yeah, Ryan, let us know what happens after the deposit's paid, at least here in our environment. You know, deposits paid, they are moving in, let's say next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, we do the move-in checklist, that type of thing. We like to really establish something with the tenants to make sure they know our expectations. We know their expectations, just to get that set up. Owners get their monthly draws, around the 8th or 9th of the month. We have access to their technology so they can look in, see any maintenance work orders, so forth on their end. So they really have kind of a pulse whenever they need. And then obviously we're there as their main point of contact to reach out for any issues or questions.
Cool. No, and one thing that came to mind, all of that stuff starts, when they move in. Between the time the deposit's paid, at least what I've loved to do over the course of the last 10 years is doing the move-in inspection. So, and we've gone through different variations of that over time, but document it before they move in. So it's super easy on the move out, when they move out, we do the security deposit disposition and stuff like that. As Ryan was saying that, this must have been like 2013. So almost 10 years ago, I was doing the move-in inspections myself. I signed the owner up. I'm leasing the property, then I'm doing the move-in. And I actually did the move-in with the tenant, unfortunately, one time. And we walked in and we were in like 1.5 inches of water. The whole entire unit is flooded. And it was my friend's property. Right?
Oh,
so it was like, oh, great. Signed up my friend. I think what happened is when the previous tenant moved out a week prior, or the cleaners or something came and somebody left some water on, and it was over a week of dripping in there. So,
oh boy,
had we not done the move-in inspection, the tenants would have just picked up keys at the office or something and then called us livid, right? Because I was able to catch it, before they moved in, all their stuff in, at least we were able to get it rectified.
Sure,
we found them a new house actually. So, but the other stuff, let's see, we set up things like the rental sales tax account. I'm trying to think all the other stuff that happens right before they pay their first month's rent, and then that's when the maintenance calls starts. And that's when, as far as Ryan's concerned and his team, they're on call 24/7,
right?
Doing maintenance at nights, weekends, holidays, collection of rent, paying the collected rental sales tax and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you'll even have that occasional owner. In fact, they're one of my owners we've had for years. His name's James. He had a couple of properties in Mesa. I'm really good friends with him, so he'll appreciate this story. But we had just moved tenants in, and he had come back and said, "Hey, Ryan, you know what? I'm retired now. I've got time. I'm just going to take these back and, kind of deal with these on my own." And I'm like, okay, well, our door's always open. It was 30 days later. He's calling me saying, "Ryan, this one tenant, he's calling me daily for maintenance stuff. And most it's his responsibility. And then my other house, they haven't paid rent yet. What do I do? Can I go lock him out? Do I need to get an attorney?" And he's just like, "You're right. It's $75 a month. That's more than a nice gym membership. That's totally." I was wanting to go fishing and golfing, thinking I'm going to just collect rent and be done with it. He's like, take this headache back. So it is something that there's a process to it. We're there just so you have free time to live your life, do your job.
I think that's a common misconception you get is that, and I know I had this most misconception before I started here, is that all the hard stuff's in the beginning, like doing the tenant application and stuff. And once that's done, you guys don't do anything, right?
Well, I think our sales department, they get this call all the time. They're like, hey, could you just place the tenant and I'll manage it myself? And we're like, well, we don't offer that, but I'm curious why you think you want to do that. And, they do say that. They're like, well, the hard part is screening the applicant, getting the lease signed, getting him to move in. To the contrary is what Ryan said. It's like, no, the work just started. They moved in, and now it's up to us to make sure it's a smooth process.
Yeah.
It's everything that you don't realize, that if you have one good tenant, that never calls you and it's perfect, you're like, this is easy. Oh, yeah. And then you get a different tenant in there who calls every single day and wants you to come down and personally look at,
change my light bulbs.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think the tenants, they treat it differently when it's an owner that owns it themselves, managing it themselves.
Sure.
They'll bug you a little bit more. They'll text you at 10 at night, when it's a third party legitimate company that, we're obviously responsive and we're going to do things by the book, but it's different. It's not, it's business. It's not emotional.
Yeah. We've talked about that before, putting that buffer, even if you're going to self-manage, taking that,
set the expectation.
Set that expectation and like, don't be calling me at midnight because they will. Things come up.
I got boundaries, man.
For sure.
Well, that kind of rolls into, I guess, the next question, which is, let's say you get a tenant in there, placed, everything's good, collect a couple months rent, and then something comes up, maintenance related. What does that process look like? If I'm a, owner and the pipe burst at my house and there's water everywhere, what happens in that scenario?
Well, dude, we're in the middle of one right now. So 2 nights ago, we had crazy storms, right? Here in Gilbert, Arizona, Gilbert Mesa area. And 4 basements of a 4-plex flooded. I just saw the videos yesterday, right? So that happened in the middle of the night. Maintenance coordinators are on call, property managers are on call, taking this call that, hey, these basements are flooding out. And meanwhile, the owner, he's home sleeping. He's actually traveling, enjoying his life. And our maintenance team, restoration companies, contractors, they're up in the middle of the night, handling everything. And then he gets a call the next morning. Hey, just so you know, your whole property flooded, insurance claims, and it turned into this big deal. But, it only got taken care of smoothly because somebody was on call and, went through the process. All 4 tenants are taken care of. They're, placed where they need to be. And, that happened 24 hours ago. So it's just fresh in my mind. Right.
Yeah. Even from a self-management perspective, like you would probably, like if I'm that guy and I'm on vacation, it's not that I'm being malicious by not taking that phone call. I just figure, it's 12 o'clock and I'm on vacation, I'll get back to them.
Yeah. Why are they calling me over and over and over?
And you don't realize that we're getting hit with like a borderline hurricane here, and that, the place is flooding. So it helps to have somebody on call at all times, for sure.
And I bring that up just because it's fresh, right? But it's whether if you self-manage, just so you know, you're on call 24/7. If you hire a third-party management company, they should be on call 24/7. And if they're not, that should be one of the qualifiers. Like, hey, what happens on a night, a weekend, or a holiday? And between, different teams and so forth, we have it covered. And it's a tough thing. 4th of July weekend, Christmas weekend, Thanksgiving. I mean, you have to be on call. So, we've worked at, Ryan's been doing that for 15 years, being part of that schedule and that managing that.
Yeah. Well, and you have to have those expectations up front with the owner too. We have a maintenance reserve for that reason. Hey, there's going to be emergency stuff that comes in. All of your contractors need to be licensed, bonded, insured. If that's not happening, you're opening yourself up for more lawsuits, issues down the road. Oh, they installed these blinds and they fell on my child. Who's covering that?
What kind of blinds?
You've seen it all. So that's a crucial aspect. And so having that set up already with your owners, knowing, if this happens, I know X, Y, and Z is going to take place, and I'm taken care of.
Maybe you could speak a little to when you say maintenance reserve, what exactly for an owner?
Yeah. So I've seen all sorts of different maintenance reserves. We currently have a $300 maintenance reserve. It's just for anything that, might be covered on that, where we say, hey, we're going to just send out a vendor to take care of this. We'll keep you posted if there's issues or if it needs an estimate.
Sure.
But mainly it's just set up.
So in that middle of the night flood scenario, you can call somebody.
Yes.
Even if so-and-so is on vacation, you can't get a hold of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we really, that's the main goal is we don't want to bug you. You gave us this. We want to take care of it.
Sure.
You want to set it and forget it. And we don't want that headache. We're here to solve your headaches.
And it's to the tenant's benefit too, because it's not like hey, I know the blinds just fell on your kids, but I'm going to have to call you back when I get a hold of the owner,
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
You can act right then.
Yeah.
Well, and I've been put on my landlord hat, not owning a management company, right? As the landlord, I get the same exact email from the maintenance coordination team or the property manager that's like, hey, your the HVAC system is not blowing cold air. We're sending somebody out. If it's over $250 or $300 and $350, whatever that threshold is, we'll let you know. And if I don't hear anything, I already know, hey, it was less than the threshold. Tenants were taken care of same day, and it's just a peace of mind factor. Ryan hit it on the nail too, with the nail on the head, I should say, with licensed, bonded, insured contractors. With managing so many homes, we have every story in the book, right? But we actually had a vendor accidentally lit the building on fire, right? And to no fault of their own, it was an accident, freak accident. But they were licensed, bonded, insured, and everything was covered. Stuff got fixed actually rather quickly. And had they not been licensed, it'd be like, hey, I'm going to wash my hands of this. Yeah. And it's the owner's fault, or it's the property management company's fault. So more of a warning to those that have management companies, make sure that is a question you ask them. Do you require your vendors to be licensed, bonded, and insured? Yeah. And if they're like, well, sometimes, but people are hard to find.
Yeah. And I get a pretty good deal over here for
my buddy Zach. He's really good at fixing HVAC machines.
Right.
But when I was signing owners, I'd be like, hey, there's the Craigslist special. It's like, they'll get it done for half the cost. But if anything goes wrong, that dude disappears. Yeah. So anyway, that should just be a pre-qualifier as you're interviewing management companies or determining, even if you self-manage, do not save the 20% or the $20 or whatever to use the guy that's unlicensed.
Yeah.
Right. That's a perfect segue, I guess, next to the next question is, how often should an owner expect to hear from a property manager? So tenants moved in, everything's good. Should we be hearing all the time, or is it?
Well, Ryan, how often do you talk to all your owners?
I was going to say the owners don't want to hear from me. Basically, sure. In an ideal world, I joke, but I've got an owner, Dan Valenzuela. I love him to death. He's got like 5 properties with us, but I'll call him just to say, now, Dan, there's nothing wrong with your properties. I have to open like that.
Sure.
Because he knows, all right, what broke this time? What's going on?
He's got you saved in his phone and he's like,
I don't. Yeah. And so, the goal is the no news is good news in this industry. The rent's coming in. We don't need to tell you if it's late, if they're having maintenance issues, anything like that. So we really are set up in a way where, hey, there's some stuff if you want to check online in your owner portal, that type of thing, you're more than welcome to view. But unless there's something going on with your property, we're not going to bug you.
No, and this goes back again to when I was signing up our clients, doing the sales and getting new management contracts. They would ask this word for word what Ben said. How often am I going to hear from you? Should I expect like every Monday or Tuesday, like noon, whatever? And I'm like, hey, honestly, the less you hear from us, the better things are going.
Yeah.
And they're like, really? I'm like, well, you're going to hear from us once a month, no matter what, with your monthly statement, right? It's not a phone call. It's not a text, but it's, hey, on Q has collected the rent. We're dispersing this, less the fee or whatever. So if that's all you hear from us, that means the tenant paid rent and you got your money and there's no maintenance issues. And they're like, wow, the less I hear, the better. So if I hear from you 12 times a year with statements, your tenant paid rent and there's no maintenance issues, right?
Yes.
What they don't know is, let's just say Ryan's working with a tenant, and maybe they are having issues paying rent, and he's having to follow up with them, text them, email them, call them 7 times, and he chases down rent, does all this, work, but he doesn't call the owner every time he talks to the tenant, right? He doesn't say, hey, just so you know, the tenant texted me last night and said they're having trouble bringing in rent. Now if it gets past the 5th and, all that, of course he communicates that. But what doesn't get communicated to the owners every time is all of those tedious communications and everything with all the tenants. That's, the owner doesn't want to hear that stuff. They don't, they think they do, but they don't.
Well, and there's that trust you have with the owners. I've got a couple owners that have, quite a few properties, 20, 30 plus type thing. And I know what they expect. And so there's stuff, hey, I know what he wants on this price for a lease renewal. I'm not even going to bug this owner. And you'll build those relationships. And so they just know, hey, they're going to take care of it. Don't even wake me up for this type thing.
I mean, we were prepping for the podcast, kind of looking at the overview, and you brought up an owner. I won't say his name on here, but he's been with us for 10 years, and it's actually Ben's neighbor.
Yeah.
I found out this week, but it's like been with us for 10 plus years, and we haven't talked to him hundreds of times. It's just as issues come up, and the biggest news he's had in the last 10 years is his property manager changed a couple times over 10 years.
And you stopped me to talk about it at the mailbox.
And so one thing again, and just going back to, I know a ton of our listeners manage themselves, or they're kind of accidental landlords, as we call them. You just have to ask yourself, what's your time worth? Us in the industry, our time is worth this communication. It's our career. It's our job. You hired us to do it, right? It's not annoying for us. This is our job. If I'm a landlord and I was not in this industry, I'd be like, is my time worth more than they're charging me to be on call 24/7, to do all the bookkeeping and the statements that I need to give to my CPA and do all this stuff? And most of the time, it's not. And you're jumping over, what's the saying? You're jumping over pennies, or jumping over dollars to pick up dimes or whatever. Yeah. You're really not getting ahead.
Right. All right. Well, I guess then last question. Let's say you're an owner who wants to be a little more involved. Are you allowed to go look at your property? Are you allowed to talk to your tenants?
Well, actually, this segue is actually going back to the last question. Ryan, and I know another one of our property managers, or two others that I know of that have, so we manage maybe 20 or 100 units for some of these owners, right? And instead of them going to the properties, which we'll get to in just a second, but it's also the phone calls. You have scheduled like a cadence of phone calls. And I know one I did with an owner yesterday that they call every Monday or every other Monday, and they say, hey, let's just talk about my 24 properties. Let's knock everything out, the lease renewals. What are the other things you guys talk about?
Just kind of check in on what's vacant, what's the activity going on that, those types of reports. But yeah, real quick and fast.
Yeah. So then segueing into what you were saying, some of the owners are like, hey, can I meet you there tomorrow? Can we just show up? And I'm sure Ryan has some good ones, because dude, over the years, I've gotten calls from tenants that are like, hey, the owner just showed up and basically barged in. Yeah. What's going on? Yeah. We're like, fire alarm,
Yeah. Well, I have another good friend. His name's Sean. He's got one over in Tempe, and he was in town, and he's like, hey, can I just swing by the property? And I actually reached out to the tenants, followed the protocols. But I told him, I'm like, hey, Sean, I'm saying you're a family member coming. I'm not telling them you're the owner. Do not give them your information. Anyway, he shows up. He calls me after. He's like, Ryan, I'm so stupid, but we had such a good relationship. I told him I was the owner, gave him my contact number.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, sure enough, this last December, they reach out to him. Hey, things are tight with Christmas. Can you do anything with rent this month? He calls me. He's like, yeah, it was so awkward. I ended up giving him $200 credit. Told him just work with my property manager going forward.
Because I'm blocking your number.
Yeah, exactly.
It's totally, and you can understand for the tenant. It's not like, for them, it's like, oh, well, you showed up here.
Yeah.
you obviously want a relationship with me. You came to meet me. So of course I'm going to call and text you and ask you these things.
Yeah. And that's really kind of a light example. We've had others where, the tenant tries to pit, the property manager next to the owner and hey, well, the owner said they would have a vendor here and we don't know anything about it. And it's a he said, she said. It's a nightmare.
There are some clients that you wonder why they hire us because you're like, wait, you want to talk to the tenant, you want to do all your own maintenance, you want to do this. So basically you just want a statement every month.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, that's kind of what I want. It's like, okay, that's a different way to do things, but it's kind of designed to like, we'll take care of, you get your time back, see what your time is worth and hire us to handle it, or hire, there's listeners in other markets that we're not even an option, and that's fine. There's great property management companies in every market.
Right.
But just, you got to weigh out what your time is worth,
And I know we here at OnQ have this, and I know other property management companies do, but there's ways to get eyes on the property without showing up there and giving your phone number. We have an inspection process where you can literally have an inspector go do a formal walkthrough, take pictures, and they can log in and see these things so they don't have to show up in person.
No, it goes another level because we've had owners that are like, our routine inspection, there's a program for it. They'll be like, why don't I just pay for a flight? I'll come down. I'll come walk it myself. And I'm like, okay, let's just talk about this real quick. Your flight, even on sale, dude, is like $100 round trip. It's really probably $300 or $400. Your time, right, invested in doing it. Your hotel, your rental car,
food.
And it's like, dude, for X amount, our inspector will go out there, document it, send it to you digitally. And it's our fees tax deductible anyway,
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you'll do that? And so, part of our issue is we need to educate our owners and let them know, like, hey, this is a service that can save so much time, so much energy, and peace of mind, that the house isn't trashed.
Yeah. And it takes, which we've said, I feel like every episode, it takes the emotional attachment. Our inspectors, they don't have the same emotional attachment to the home that you do.
Yeah. When you walk in,
if you used to live there, I can't believe they put a couch and TV in this room. Like this was my kid's little room or whatever. The inspectors come in and they're efficient and formal. They're going to take the required pictures and you'll be able to see it all and without making those judgments in person in front of a tenant.
Yeah. And it's kind of going full circle. So at the beginning, we were saying, hey, we do a move-in inspection at the beginning. We do a move out inspection at the end. Those are kind of the bookends. And then like Ben was saying, those routine inspections, as we call them routine inspections. Some people call them spot inspections or mid-lease inspections or whatever. And then you have this chronological order of the property. So it's like, hey, that routine inspection from 2 years ago does not match the one we did now. So, we know, what the timeline was there. And we've had, crazy. I mean, we're talking about stories, but the routine inspections, they've also seen it all between.
Oh yeah.
They're like, you're not supposed to have pets, but there's like 2 dog bowls and a cat tree.
Yeah. And you won't let me in that room.
Yeah,
and there's something scratching at the door.
No, I mean, the other thing I love the routines for personally is the smell test. So it doesn't come across on photos. And the inspector's like, just so you know, it smells like smoke, cigarette smoke, or whatever, or it smells like pets in here.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's weird. It smells like pets because they're not supposed to have pets, and so we've sent, 10-day notices, friendly reminders about air filters. Hey, the landscaping needs kept up, little simple things that save the relationship rather than dinging them on their way out.
Right.
And so it's for the tenants good too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up, right? I feel like we covered it pretty well. And Ryan, you feel like your day in and day out is covered pretty well?
You nailed it all. Yes.
All right. Well, then that's it for us this time. Thank you. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you guys next time.